I'm here with Bree, general manager of the Washington Justice, after a pretty rough one. It seemed like Boston came sort of out of a honeymoon situation. I'm not sure if that term really applies, but they seem to have a breakthrough in their play. And maybe based on the performances that you had, that wasn't something that most people probably had in their pick'ems. So can you run us through what this match felt like to you?
Yeah. I think we went into this kind of thinking that this was like our match to win or lose. Like, if we played well, we would win. If we played poorly, we would lose, which is a good place to be. But I think it went wrong for us in both directions. I think Boston was both better than we expected, and we played worse than we expected. I think Boston, there's been a good amount of criticism about the amount of substitutions that they've been making, and I think that it was a really a big step in the right direction to really kind of tighten up that rotation. We've seen that like all the way back in season one when London decided to just cut down to their core and then win a championship on the back of that. That's been historically a smart move. I think that played off really well for them. And then on our side of things, I think we were overly optimistic with the extent to this kind of Tracer Winston composition being able to kind of not quite one trick it, like obviously like on circuit and like in other maps we do have other compositions, but we thought that we could really like that could be like our trademark like meta, and that we would be able to hold our own against this Zarya Reaper composition. I think that was a misread on our part. So it was we were fighting an uphill battle against a team with a head of steam. So that was it was a tough loss.
What's your solution to that then? Because I think a lot of teams, probably every team that doesn't have someone, has the problem that they have a split hero pool between their main tank specialist and their off tank specialist. Most teams, if they have two tanks, probably have that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, like, it feels like, for instance, in your case, Mark can play Winston, Mark can play Doom. Now, if you want Zarya on the same map, which you very well might, then that's a problem for a lot of main tank players to gap, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when you wanted to play Zarya, you bring in Kalios. Do you think that's a paradigm that a lot of Overwatch League tanks will just have to break? That the Zarya player can play Monkey, and like the Doomfist player will also have to learn Zarya?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting problem that like teams are all going to solve in a different way. Right? Like we saw like the Toronto's decision, which was we will play Hotba and Hotba will play Monkey, and but Boston did the same thing. His Winston looked very good. I think so. Like there's going to be that school of thought, and then the school of thought that we had was we can still run this Winston composition, but you can adjust outside of the macro changes of just the hero selection. There's playstyle changes, right? You can play an aggressive dive. You can kind of catch a dive. You can there's different ways of I think the next tick on that scale is probably aggression and level of aggression and how you play a composition. And it was our theory, that we could tweak that and not have to make changes to the heroes. And that was, I don't want to say outright proven incorrect. Like, we'll go back. We haven't had time. This is pretty fresh. We haven't had a chance to go back and, we can maybe we'll go back to the video and we'll say, oh, like this was just this person had a bad day. We just had some unlucky breaks. But it'll be going back to the drawing board, and it'll be like a real gut check of okay, like were we incorrect in assuming that this composition can work, and therefore do we have to make that like decision to choose one tank or the other? I'm not 100% sure yet. I don't have a great answer. We'll probably have to figure that out over late hours this evening.
For sure. Now, speaking of like off days, it seemed like it wasn't the greatest day for Decay. Like the past weeks, we felt like, okay, this is once again an absolute top player in the Overwatch League, carrying heavy, like one of the best tracers in terms of stats. And today he went quiet. Is that a result of just like daily variance, or was it something that systemically changed the way he couldn't find the performance that he usually does?
I think a little bit of both. I'm gonna keep going down the middle of these. I think against Paris, like he looked fantastic, but that was also, I think, because of the composition. Like they were running that Winston composition that left their backline a lot more exposed. Especially the way that they were playing was like really like press W, like really aggressive, and that leaves your supports really exposed. And so like Decay was just like unchecked for a lot of that match. And so I think he didn't have a great day, but like this is, I mean, again, like this is probably what it's going to come down to. Like his play specifically will probably be a big focus of our review of, did Decay have a bad day and therefore this composition is viable, or did he have a bad day because the Zarya Reaper composition just you can't get value. Like even if he had a great day, we just can't get value. And that'll be like our coach. A big part of that will be, good coaches have to be able to figure that out. They have to be able to, see beyond just what happened in the match and just kind of say, okay, if he had been able to one clip here, if he had gotten that stick, could we have actually won this, or was the ask the task too high of an order even for an exceptional tracer player, and therefore we have to make changes.
For sure. Now it seems like your team, generally speaking, has sort of like used the toolbox that most of the top tier teams are playing. You have a bit of Winston in there, you have some Doom, like you're playing Tracer, you're playing Genji, you're playing Widow, these heroes. Some teams seem to have their own flavor, so to speak, right? For instance, even good teams like the Fusion appear to be. They run some Ashe or Cassidy because reason MN3 likes it, right?
Yeah.
Is there do you just happen to fall into the general toolbox and you're already running comfort picks, or do you think you could improve on finding more of your comfort picks and finding the unique attributes about your team?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like pull the hipster card and say like we were one of the first teams to run like this Winston composition, but I think we were, because like, if you look at our top, like if you look at our 5 starters that we've been running with, like Mag's best hero is Winston, Tracer's best hero is Decay, like Happy's very comfortable on like this suite of Soldier and Widow. Openers Lucio is very high up there for him. Krillin's getting value on the Ana. So I do think that this was a meta that we felt really comfortable in. It's why we had like that success that we had against Atlanta. Is that like it was both, I think that was at the weekend where people kind of really centered in on the Winston composition being something that was going to like be present for the rest of the stage. And it fit really well into our comfort picks. So I don't think there's a ton hero wise that we can be changing to make this like more of like our flavor. I think it's going to come down to play style. One of the things that happened to us a lot last year that I'm going to be looking for in my VOD review tonight is how we balance our resources between like our very strong players, in particular like Decay and Mag. Like when you have multiple players that have the opportunity to kind of pop off and win you a match, the way that you can screw up is by like not choosing who's going to do it, right? Like you either commit and you say, okay, like Decay's going to be the guy today. We're going to give him all the resources, or, Mag's like feeling it and he's going to be the guy. And if we don't kind of make that internal decision and we just like split the resources, then like neither of them is really like equipped to win, and then we just lose. So I think that'll be like a big question for us as far as tweaking it to our style. It's going to be like less about the heroes and more about the play style.
Right. Because statistically speaking, I remember looking through stats last year, and it felt like the K on Tracer was outstanding in very relevant metrics such as eliminations, first kills.
He doesn't die.
He doesn't die.
His death rates were disgusting. Like it was not even close. It was like way like they had to like extend the axes of the graph just to show like his KDA.
Yeah, his KDA was, I think, the best in the Overwatch League. But I will say he also took a fair bit of healing for that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And that's, I think Tracer's a great example of like this playstyle thing, right? It's like there were some Tracers that had more damage than him because you were using them as like this damage dealing hero. and it also kind of dictates your support line a bit, right? Like it's a lot easier to like yeet a break pack to like a
Yes,
diving tracer than it is for like a Lucio to perhaps overextend and like get punished for trying to like get the aura to where the tracer is. So that's definitely like that's a relevant tightrope for us to walk, and that's something that we're going to be looking at as well. Is like, yeah, it's like, okay, maybe the tracer works, but maybe it requires so many resources that, and that's a pit that that the Justice have fallen into, that I've fallen into, is like this. Oh, we can make this work, but it's like at what cost? Like, yeah, okay, like yeah, okay, fine. Maybe Tracer does work against this Reaper composition, but do we have to give him every single resource and then okay, like the tracer feels good and it's getting value, but we're still losing every team fight. So
for sure. Now, it it's interesting because I feel like if I have the trading market right, I think main support was very competitive in terms of what kind of agents teams try to, bid for. And there were also some really good main supports on the market. It feels like you found a quote unquote budget solution that now appears to be performing outside of what the market expected. And Opener is playing very, very good Overwatch at the moment, right?
he is.
Can you explain how you found him?
I can take almost no credit. It was our coaches. They did a really, really good job. And you're right. I think that was a really difficult position to scout for and to plan for, because there were a lot of big names. There were a lot of, it wasn't some, I think a lot of the, like when you have a role that's like really hotly contested, like nobody wants to accept an offer until they've like make sure that they've like maxed value. So we had like a lot of people that were like, they would come to you and be like, okay, like what's your number? And run that number to the next team. Then they'd increase that number. And so it like got to this point where the coaches, yeah, like they had done their scouting, they believed in Opener as a player. And one of the things that I think jumped out to them specifically was his age, right? He turned 18 right before the season started. We really believed in having like a young roster that was going to be able to kind of develop and grow with Overwatch 2. And so he's like, if he wasn't even playing as well as he is right now, I think we still would have felt good about the decision, because we didn't sign him as someone that on the first day was going to carry the team. We signed him as someone that was going to grow, that was going to be a high value player to sign to the team. So it's awesome that he's playing as well as he is right now. I think part of me is kind of like waiting for a correction to the expected value, but I mean, if that doesn't happen, I'll be thrilled. And he's extremely coachable, really open minded, and open to feedback. And I think that's there's more than a couple of teams in the league right now that I think are probably struggling with too many egos and too many people kind of butting heads. And it's great to have someone like him in that role, where, like we said, like, when we're going to have to be making decisions about, who's the guy who gets the resources, he's someone that's really willing to just like be a team player. And the message to all the other players out there in the world is, you can still, like, people are noticing that, right? Like, he's not playing selfishly, but he still looks good, and like people are noticing that. And that's, if he was out here playing selfishly and overextending, I don't think he would look as good, and I don't think people would be picking up on the fact that, yeah, like he's outperforming expectations.
Sure. One of the potential vectors of the market correction there is theoretically, let's say, a double flex support meta coming in. Are you guys nervously looking at the patch notes, just going, please, not yet. Vigilante is not 18.
Yeah. I'm just like looking at it, I'm like, can we just like push this patch like 2 weeks? Yeah, and like a lot of teams like are feeling the pain of that right now, right? Like there are teams that granted, they're the adjustment to like Violet on Lucio or like Lastro, right? Like there are flex supports that are playing that are playing Lucio extremely well. I think we'll be okay. Even before the season started, in different versions of the alpha, there were times where we were flexing Opener over onto flex support heroes, and he looked good. He looked solid. So yeah, definitely. I mean, like, yeah, the idea behind our roster construction was pretty straightforward. So would love Vigilante to hurry up and turn 18. if he can do that any faster, that'd be great. Yeah, we're not. We built this roster hoping that it was going to be like very well rounded. So I don't. The beginning of the season has gone well for us, and I hope that we can continue to not be put in one of those like stumped positions of like, well, I guess we got to sign someone on a 30-day contract, or we got to do some kind of like band-aid fix, because that's not really the type of team that we want to be.
For sure. Now, last week we asked Mac about the involvement or what Ty Dollar brings to the team. What is it from your position that you think he brings?
I have like an awesome chart that like just feels so perfect for like describing our coaches, and it's there's like 3 overlapping Venn diagram of like we needed someone that could really get the strategy that Chihuahua was capable of, the stability that Supreme brings to our players, and just like bring it to them. I think that we had 3 coaches last year that were smart and capable, and that the players liked, but they were not. I don't want to say not approachable, but like they just maybe they couldn't like condense it down. Like I mean, like you have a teaching background, like right? Like it's like there's knowing the subject matter, there's knowing the students, and then there's being able to like bring it to them and like bring it and meet them where they are is probably what I'm going for here. And Tidal is exceptional at that. I think you can see moments where like Chua has a really good idea, but he doesn't necessarily have like the tools to like bring it to the players the way that they need to. And Tidal is there for that. You can see Supreme being able to kind of pick a player up that is like down on themselves and really needs that confidence boost. And then Tidal can take that and run with it and say, okay, now that like now that you remember that you're a good player, let's take that and let's apply it to this concept. So he fit really, really well into this roster. Like he was like Supreme and I have both referred to him as like the missing piece in like our coaching scheme and how we wanted that to run.
The idea of someone that just takes care of the emotional landscape of the players has been a subject that's recently sort of gotten topical. What's your take on it? Do you think that's a very important aspect of coaching in Overwatch?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's important. I don't think it's important. Like we had coaches coming to us in the off season that like just wanted to be like mental coaches, and they're like, yeah, like all I'm going to do is like take care of your players' mental. And I don't think it's so important or so taxing that I would like sign a coach that's like their sole job. But it's definitely something that when you look at kind of like the bar chart of coaches, like I need that. Like there's certainly like a floor that I want all of the coaches to have, and I also like that we have a coach, and I will probably always want a coach that has like a spike in that skill set, because I've worked with coaches that don't have that, and I think it's a dangerous mindset that is extremely prevalent in esports and Overwatch League, that like skill can just make up for bad mental. Like, oh yeah, but we won't mental boom if we don't lose, and like if we have a good strategy, it doesn't matter if you're having a good time. And that has like proven itself time and time again not to be true. So I think that for me, and like and how I like my team to look, I think we'll always want to have like some amount of that like well addressed. I think it's always paid off for us.
For sure. Now you're heading into, potential qualification for the kickoff clash. There's Florida in the way. How do you generally, in your mind, how do you match up on the average skill level that you are expected to bring to the games? Because I think when we look at your results, I think it's fair to say that you probably generally should be expected to win against Boston, like the match today. Yep. At the same time, maybe winning against Atlanta in the fashion that you did was either an overperformance by you or an underperformance by Atlanta. What's the real skill level? If you had a power level counter from Dragon Ball Z, like where is the justice in comparison to Florida?
I think we're probably, I would put us in the same tier, I would say. I do, and this is I'm partial to my team, I'm partial to my players, so I would say my expectation for us is higher. I think that like the skill level of our players is high, but I think Florida's playing extremely well, and there's something to be said for momentum and outperforming expectations. But I think even before the season started, we as a team sat down and like looked at the landscape of like North America and it just felt remarkably even. I feel like you and I might have even like shared a message or two just about the fact that like the the standard distribution of teams just felt really, really compact and really, really tight this year compared to like really any other year in the Overwatch League. Um, so yeah, like I think that fans and we as a team expect to see more of these like jumps up and down week by week and like a lot of pick'ems boomed, especially with a meta that moves really quickly. I think the we this last week, the big frustration for me is watching what we did with Atlanta. And I think not learning from their mistakes for our game with Boston. I think, yeah, like I do not think that we are like 3-0 better than Atlanta as a team. I think they're a very strong team, that obviously just went to the finals and has made some great changes since then. Um, I'm happy that we got that win, but I don't know if we are like this. Yeah, they are not a team that should never take them out from us. I do think that we had a better read on the meta. That we kind of found this Winston Tracer comp that worked really well for us. That in particular worked really well against the Doomfist comp, and they might have rested on their laurels a little bit, thinking we can make this Doomfist comp work against whatever they throw against us. That did not work for them. And what upsets me way more than losing to Boston is that we then took that bad approach and applied it ourselves this week. And we said, yep, we really like this Winston Tracer comp. We really think that we can, if we know that the Zarya Reaper comp is strong and that like it might factually counter what we're doing, but we think if we play it well enough, when we play it, streamlined enough, we can be, we are the exception to the rule. And obviously that wasn't the case. So that was my bigger frustration this week. But to loop this back to answering your question, I think there's just a ton of meat in the middle of North America, like just a ton. I think there's a couple teams. I think Dallas's Zarya Reaper comp is pretty terrifying. So I think they're up there. Shock. I mean, you look at their record and that's very good, but I think that their strength of schedule, like they're good, but not unbeatable, right? Like they're not like this. They're not an unbeatable team. Gladiators. They were one nano and spawn away from the win there. So I think there's a lot of upset potential in the middle here, and I'm hoping that we take that seriously and we can come out on top against Florida.
Right. Now, I guess as a last subject, I took interest in a tweet you recently had, and I'll briefly read it out to bring everyone up to speed. And you said, imagine if the NBA said only NBA starters can play basketball. Fans hyped to try what they saw on TV? No. High school leagues? Nah. College players on the cusp of making it? Nope. Bench players trying to earn a spot? Go play soccer. It's like a transferable skill. Unreal. Is that what do you think should have been the ideal approach in order to get this old lady over the road?
I'll open with my big grain of salt in that I don't know what is happening behind the scenes with the development of Overwatch 2. Game development is obviously extremely difficult. Balancing games is difficult. Everything that they're doing is difficult. But where I sit, it is my job to look at my team and say, like, what are the decisions that can be made that can put us in the best position, that can make my players happy, that can make them better at the game, that can help us win. And there's just a lot of frustration, in particular when we talk about if we bring up the tank example, right? So let's say that our solution is, okay, we really want to stick with Mag, and so we want him to learn Zarya. Where is he going to go? Like Mag's the guy that last year he beat me into the facility more days than he didn't, and he was certainly here every day after I was gone. And now I come in here and that's still the case, but is he getting the juice from the squeeze from his time if he's not able to? We don't really have with the scrimmages that we have. We're going to practice the compositions that we want to play. And so there's just not that much time if he's trying to learn Zarya, or if anyone's trying to like do something different. There's just like this huge just hole of like time and experience that like we're missing out on. And it's not something that's like unfair, because obviously like, every team is feeling this way, but it's just really disappointing because it feels like that's one of the answers and one of the solutions that we would have to like problems as a team, and it's just not there. Um, and then like you see the ripple effects of that like all the way out. Like we have fan events here, right? And it's awesome to have our fans here and cheering for us, and you can see them kind of like, I like to think, and maybe I'm projecting onto the fans a bit, but I like to think that like last year, you would see them like chomping at the bit, like even if like in a game today, like where we lost to Boston, they're like chomping at the bit to like go home and say, oh, like I can do that composition better, I can hit those sticks. And they don't have that, and it feels a little bit detached. It doesn't feel great. So again, like it's not easy, and I'm not going to sit here, and I'm sure people look at my job and they say, oh, like, why didn't you just play this comp, why didn't you just make this swap, right? It's like when you don't have complete information, it's easy to make assumptions. But I think not having access to like the Overwatch 2 beta, not having that as a tool in our arsenal, not having that as like something to point our fans to, something to get excited about, has been hard. It's certainly been hard for us this season.
Can you describe what it's like? So I imagine like the practice outside of scrim blocks would be limited because, for instance, there's nobody to queue into, right? Or is there queue quick play functionality on the tournament?
I'm gonna dodge that one.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, it's something where I think like historically players have always tried to like organize their own games.
Right.
But the trouble is, I mean, you have 5 to 8 different time zones, different team schedules. You have teams that you're going to be playing that upcoming weekend. So like
Right.
maybe you're a little bit weird about, you see like, oh, I saw that like Punk's queuing up and we're about to play them, and like I'm probably not gonna like leak a strat, but maybe. And so and we are very jealous with their time, right? Like we are scrimming a lot, and we do a lot of VOD review, and so it's something where if they don't have like something that's like really quick and easy to access at their fingertips to then do those things, it's just really hard to fit that into their schedule. And that's really not like there for them right now.
Are you running 3 blocks a day?
It varies. We certainly were in the off season. In the off season and leading into the beginning of the season, it was 3 blocks a day every day. We've taken that back a bit now because there's a lot more useful VOD review. Right, like before, like we could go back and we could watch a scrim, but you don't know if the opponent is practicing a weird comp or if they subbed in someone. Like you don't know if they're going 100%. But now we can watch back matches when people are they're putting it all out there, and so that's a lot more useful. And I think we're a good, like, as far as video review, like we're good at getting value out of that time. I don't want them to do it if we're not going to learn anything. I think that we do, so we mix that in now a little bit more.
Sure. Now, I saw on Twitter that you tried to do the math what you guys need in order to qualify.
Yeah.
How are your chances now after this Boston game? What do you think?
It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be really tight. So yeah, like every tournament series, it's 4 wins and you're in. So obviously getting the win today would have been huge for us. I'm probably gonna have to rework the numbers now because there were a couple. Obviously, like in my personal rankings, I had us winning against Boston today. So I'll have to go back and kind of look at the numbers. Obviously, if we beat Florida, we're in. If we lose, we'll be 3-3. It'll come down to map differential. And what'll hurt us there is, getting 3-0'd by Dallas hurts, but 3-0ing Atlanta is good. So it'll be close. It'll definitely be close. And not only will it be close, we will have to, if we lose, it'll have to be like a strong loss, right? Like I really think we will have to take like a map or two. I'll do the map on it, but I don't think it's something where we can go into that and expect to get rolled. And that means, frankly, if we get rolled in that game, we don't deserve to go anyway. Because like that's like Florida is the bar of like, yeah, like you should be at least as good as this team if you expect to go to the playoffs.
For sure. Then we wish you the best of luck in preparation, and thank you for the interview.
Absolutely. Thank you. Always a pleasure.